is an ABC News special report. President Bush's address to Congress. Now reporting from ABC News World Headquarters in New York, Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. This is a very important national occasion, the most important speech the President has given to the American people. What does he intend to do now in the fight against terrorism? How does the President plan to make the United States a safer place? What greater role will the federal government now have in people's lives? Congress is gathered. This is already being referred to in the White House as the Bush Doctrine. The President, who will arrive momentarily, has sat down with his staff and considered this message to the world very carefully. He will talk tonight in detail about American principles, who the enemy is, and who it is not. In this and every other nation, what he says and how he says it will have a huge impact. Thank you for joining us. There is enormous anticipation in the Congress tonight. There has just been a great round of applause for the mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, and the governor of New York, who have arrived to join the president as his special guest with Mrs. Bush. And I want to just ask very quickly, Linda Douglas, how tight is security?
It is very tight, Peter. There have been helicopters circling overhead, military jets flying overhead. The Capitol's been essentially locked down for several hours, where it's really difficult to move through the Capitol at all, or if you do, with a police escort. Okay, thanks very much, Linda. As Linda says, the tightest security ever, and in fact, the Speaker of the House agreed that the majority leader of the Republicans in the Congress stay away, and the Vice President is not there this evening as well. Mrs. Bush, Governor Pataki, and right beside her, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, who's been to see the President today and is here tonight not only as a representative of Britain, but as a guest of the Bush family. Terry Moran, well, I'll ask you in a moment to join us, because I think Bill Livingood, the House Sergeant-at-Arms, is about to introduce the President.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Terry Moran, our White House correspondent. I assume that everybody at the White House realizes what an enormous occasion this is.
Absolutely, Peter. One top aide said it is an educational responsibility, and by that he meant that the president is going to try to answer questions that Americans have about what went on and identify who is responsible for these attacks in a way that might assuage fears, fix the target. He's also going to make some very strong demands on the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, demands that they probably will not meet.
The President comes to the Congress tonight with an overwhelming reservoir of goodwill from the country and everybody who has worked on Capitol Hill. If you notice, Tom Daschle, the Democratic leader in the Senate, right there behind him, everybody has remarked time and again, Senator Schumer of New York, just how different the environment is on Capitol Hill than it has been for many, many years. President saying good evening to members of the Supreme Court on his way by. Outgoing Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, other members of the Joint Chiefs. The American political and judicial establishment is all here. We've heard the President many times this week, often very spontaneously. This is the time to hear him after he has sat down and considered the entire notion of what, as I said, the White House is referring to as a Bush Doctrine. Senator Byrd of Virginia, the Democrat, and the Chairman of the House, Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege, the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
This in itself a demonstration to the world that in times of adversity, the political establishment is one.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President pro tempore, members of Congress, and fellow Americans. In the normal course of events, presidents come to this chamber to report on the State of the Union. Tonight, no such report is needed. It has already been delivered by the American people. We have seen it in the courage of passengers who rushed terrorists to save others on the ground. Passengers like an exceptional man named Todd Beamer. And would you please help me welcome his wife, Lisa Beamer, here tonight.
Mrs. Beamer, who's pregnant, said her new child would know about the father's bravery. How strong.
We have seen the state of our union in the endurance of rescuers working past exhaustion. We've seen the unfurling of flags, the lighting of candles, the giving of blood, the saying of prayers in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We have seen the decency of a loving and giving people who have made the grief of strangers their own. My fellow citizens, for the last 9 days, the entire world has seen for itself the state of our union, and it is strong. Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom. Our grief has turned to anger, and anger to resolution. Whether we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done. I thank the Congress for its leadership at such an important time. All of America was touched on the evening of the tragedy to see Republicans and Democrats join together on the steps of this Capitol, singing God Bless America. And you did more than sing. You acted by delivering $40 billion to rebuild our communities and meet the needs of our military. Speaker Hassert, Minority Leader Gephardt, Majority Leader Daschle, and Senator Lott, I thank you for your friendship, for your leadership, and for your service to our country. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the world for its outpouring of support. America will never forget the sounds of our national anthem playing at Buckingham Palace, on the streets of Paris, and at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. We will not forget South Korean children gathering to pray outside our embassy in Seoul, or the prayers of sympathy offered at a mosque in Cairo. We will not forget moments of silence and days of mourning in Australia and Africa and Latin America. Nor will we forget the citizens of 80 other nations who died with our own. Dozens of Pakistanis, more than 130 Israelis, more than 250 citizens of India, men and women from El Salvador, Iran, Mexico, and Japan, and hundreds of British citizens. America has no truer friend than Great Britain. Once again, we are joined together in a great cause. So honored that the British Prime Minister has crossed an ocean to show his unity with America. Thank you for coming, friend. On September the 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country. Americans have known wars, but for the past 136 years, they have been wars on foreign soil, except for one Sunday in 1941. Americans have known the casualties of war, but not at the center of a great city on a peaceful morning. Americans have known surprise attacks, but never before on thousands of civilians. All of this was brought upon us in a single day, and night fell on a different world, a world where freedom itself is under attack. Americans have many questions tonight. Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. They are some of the murderers indicted for bombing American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, and responsible for bombing the USS Cole. Al-Qaeda is to terror what the mafia is to crime, but its goal is not making money. Its goal is remaking the world and imposing its radical beliefs on people everywhere. The terrorists practice a fringe form of Islamic extremism that has been rejected by Muslim scholars and the vast majority of Muslim clerics, a fringe movement that perverts the peaceful teaching of Islam. The terrorist directive commands them to kill Christians and Jews, to kill all Americans, and make no distinctions among military and civilians, including women and children. This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden, are linked to many other organizations in different countries, including the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. There are thousands of these terrorists in more than 60 countries. They are recruited from their own nations and neighborhoods and brought to camps in places like Afghanistan, where they are trained in the tactics of terror. They are sent back to their homes or sent to hide in countries around the world to plot evil and destruction. The leadership of Al-Qaeda has great influence in Afghanistan and supports the Taliban regime in controlling most of that country. In Afghanistan, we see Al-Qaeda's vision for the world. Afghanistan's people have been brutalized. Many are starving, and many have fled. Women are not allowed to attend school. You can be jailed for owning a television. Religion can be practiced only as their leaders dictate. A man can be jailed in Afghanistan if his beard is not long enough. The United States respects the people of Afghanistan. After all, we are currently its largest source of humanitarian aid, but we condemn the Taliban regime. It is not only repressing its own people, it is threatening people everywhere by sponsoring and sheltering and supplying terrorists. By aiding and abetting murder, the Taliban regime is committing murder. And tonight, the United States of America makes the following demands on the Taliban. Deliver to United States authorities all the leaders of Al-Qaeda who hide in your land. Release all foreign nationals, including American citizens you have unjustly imprisoned. Protect foreign journalists, diplomats, and aid workers in your country. Close immediately and permanently every terrorist training camp in Afghanistan, and hand over every terrorist and every person in their support structure to appropriate authorities. Give the United States full access to terrorist training camps so we can make sure they are no longer operating. These demands are not open to negotiation or discussion. The Taliban must act, and act immediately. They will hand over the terrorists, or they will share in their fate. I also want to speak tonight directly to Muslims throughout the world. We respect your faith. It's practiced freely by many millions of Americans, and by millions more in countries that America counts as friends. Its teachings are good and peaceful. And those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah. The terrorists are traitors to their own faith, trying in effect to hijack Islam itself. The enemy of America is not our many Muslim friends. It is not our many Arab friends. Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them. Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. Americans are asking, why do they hate us? They hate what they see right here in this chamber. a democratically elected government. Their leaders are self-appointed. They hate our freedoms, our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech, our freedom to vote and assemble and disagree with each other. They want to overthrow existing governments in many Muslim countries, such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. They want to drive Israel out of the Middle East. They want to drive Christians and Jews out of vast regions of Asia and Africa. These terrorists kill not merely to end lives, but to disrupt and end a way of life. With every atrocity, they hope that America grows fearful, retreating from the world and forsaking our friends. They stand against us because we stand in their way. We're not deceived by their pretenses to piety. We have seen their kind before. They are the heirs of all the murderous ideologies of the 20th century. By sacrificing human life to serve their radical visions, by abandoning every value except the will to power, they follow in the path of fascism, Nazism, and totalitarianism. And they will follow that path all the way to where it ends, in history's unmarked grave of discarded lies. Americans are asking, how will we fight and win this war? We will direct every resource at our command, every means of diplomacy, every tool of intelligence, every instrument of law enforcement, every financial influence, and every necessary weapon of war to the disruption and to the defeat of the global terror network. Now, this war will not be like the war against Iraq a decade ago, with a decisive liberation of territory and a swift conclusion. It will not look like the air war above Kosovo 2 years ago, where no ground troops were used and not a single American was lost in combat. Our response involves far more than instant retaliation and isolated strikes. Americans should not expect one battle, but a lengthy campaign, unlike any other we have ever seen. It may include dramatic strikes, visible on TV, and covert operations, secret even in success. We will starve terrorists of funding, turn them one against another, drive them from place to place, until there is no refuge or no rest. And we will pursue nations that provide aid or safe haven to terrorism. Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists. From this day forward, any nation that continues to harbor or support terrorism will be regarded by the United States as a hostile regime. Our nation has been put on notice. We're not immune from attack. We will take defensive measures against terrorism to protect Americans. Today, dozens of federal departments and agencies, as well as state and local governments, have responsibilities affecting homeland security. These efforts must be coordinated at the highest level. So tonight I announce the creation of a cabinet-level position reporting directly to me the Office of Homeland Security. And tonight I also announced a distinguished American to lead this effort to strengthen American security, a military veteran, an effective governor, a true patriot, a trusted friend, Pennsylvania's Tom Ridge. He will lead, oversee, and coordinate a comprehensive national strategy to safeguard our country against terrorism and respond to any attacks that may come. These measures are essential. The only way to defeat terrorism as a threat to our way of life is to stop it, eliminate it, and destroy it where it grows. Many will be involved in this effort, from FBI agents to intelligence operatives to the reservists we have called to active duty. All deserve our thanks, and all have our prayers. And tonight, a few miles from the damaged Pentagon, I have a message for our military. Be ready. I've called the armed forces to alert, and there is a reason. The hour is coming when America will act, and you will make us proud. This is not, however, just America's fight. And what is at stake is not just America's freedom. This is the world's fight. This is civilization's fight. This is the fight of all who believe in progress and pluralism, tolerance and freedom. We ask every nation to join us. We will ask and we will need the help of police forces, intelligence service, and banking systems around the world. The United States is grateful that many nations and many international organizations have already responded with sympathy and with support. Nations from Latin America to Asia to Africa to Europe to the Islamic world. Perhaps the NATO Charter reflects best the attitude of the world. An attack on one is an attack on all. The civilized world is rallying to America's side. They understand that if this terror goes unpunished, their own cities, their own citizens may be next. Terror unanswered can not only bring down buildings, it can threaten the stability of legitimate governments. And you know what? We're not going to allow it. Americans are asking what is expected of us. I ask you to live your lives and hug your children. I know many citizens have fears tonight, and I ask you to be calm and resolute, even in the face of a continuing threat. I ask you to uphold the values of America and remember why so many have come here. We're in a fight for our principles, and our first responsibility is to live by them. No one should be singled out for unfair treatment or unkind words because of their ethnic background or religious faith. ask you to continue to support the victims of this tragedy with your contributions. Those who want to give can go to a central source of information, libertyunites.org, to find the names of groups providing direct help in New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. The thousands of FBI agents who are now at work in this investigation may need your cooperation, and I ask you to give it. I ask for your patience with the delays and inconveniences that may accompany tighter security, and for your patience in what will be a long struggle. I ask your continued participation and confidence in the American economy. Terrorists attacked a symbol of American prosperity. They did not touch its source. America is successful because of the hard work and creativity and enterprise of our people. These were the true strengths of our economy before September 11th, and they are our strengths today. And finally, please continue praying for the victims of terror and their families, for those in uniform, and for our great country. Prayer has comforted us in sorrow and will help strengthen us for the journey ahead. Tonight, I thank my fellow Americans for what you have already done and for what you will do. And ladies and gentlemen of the Congress, I thank you, their representatives, for what you have already done and for what we will do together. Tonight we face new and sudden national challenges. We will come together to improve air safety, to dramatically expand the number of air marshals on domestic flights, and take new measures to prevent hijacking. We will come together to promote stability and keep our airlines flying with direct assistance during this emergency. We will come together to give law enforcement the additional tools it needs to track down terror here at home. We will come together to strengthen our intelligence capabilities to know the plans of terrorists before they act and to find them before they strike. We will come together to take active steps that strengthen America's economy and put our people back to work. Tonight we welcome two leaders who embody the extraordinary spirit of all New Yorkers, Governor George Pataki and Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. As a symbol of America's resolve, my administration will work with Congress and these two leaders to show the world that we will rebuild New York City. After all that has just passed, all the lives taken and all the possibilities and hopes that died with them, it is natural to wonder if America's future is one of fear. Some speak of an age of terror. I know there are struggles ahead and dangers to face. But this country will define our times, not be defined by them. As long as the United States of America is determined and strong, this will not be an age of terror. This will be an age of liberty here and across the world. Great harm has been done to us. We have suffered great loss. And in our grief and anger, we have found our mission and our moment. Freedom and fear are at war. The advance of human freedom, the great achievement of our time and the great hope of every time, now depends on us. Our nation, this generation, will lift a dark thread of violence from our people and our future. We will rally the world to this cause by our efforts, by our courage. We will not tire, we will not falter, and we will not fail. It is my hope that in the months and years ahead, life will return almost to normal. We'll go back to our lives and routines, and that is good. Even grief recedes with time and grace. But our resolve must not pass. Each of us will remember what happened that day and to whom it happened. We'll remember the moment the news came, where we were, and what we were doing. Some will remember an image of a fire or a story of rescue. Some will carry memories of a face and a voice gone forever. And I will carry this. It is the police shield of a man named George Howard, who died at the World Trade Center trying to save others. It was given to me by his mom, Arlene, as a proud memorial to her son. It is my reminder of lives that ended and a task that does not end. I will not forget the wound to our country and those who inflicted it. I will not yield. I will not rest. I will not relent in waging this struggle for freedom and security for the American people. The course of this conflict is not known, yet its outcome is certain. Freedom and fear, justice and cruelty have always been at war. And we know that God is not neutral between them. Fellow citizens, we'll meet violence with patient justice, assured of the rightness of our cause, and confident of the victories to come. In all that lies before us, may God grant us wisdom, and may He watch over the United States of America. Thank you.
President of the United States warning the Taliban in Afghanistan that if they do not give up Osama bin Laden and all those who work with him, they will suffer the same fate. Telling the rest of the world that you either are with the United States and its allies, then you will be against the United States. Telling other nations that any one of them that continues to harbor or support terrorism will be regarded by the United States as hostile. Telling the United States military that the hour is coming when the United States will act and that they will make the country proud. As he speaks to the members of the Supreme Court, asking the country to uphold the values of America and remember why so many have come here. As he speaks to other important congressmen and senators on important committees dealing with this, he asks their continued participation and confidence in the American economy. And in naming tonight Tom Ridge, the governor of Pennsylvania, to head the Office of Homeland Security, reporting directly to the President, saying to the citizens of the United States that he will do whatever it takes to protect their safety. And saying that he and his administration, the country, and all law enforcement agencies in the country will come together to give law enforcement the additional tools it needs to track down terror at home. Whether the President said we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done. I have several of my colleagues with me this evening and would like to hear their impressions of the speech. And I'm going to start with George Stephanopoulos.
Peter, the President asked the country to be calm and resolute, and tonight he led by example. He was resolved, he was reassuring, he was sober, he was strong, and to me, he's never seemed so convinced before, never seemed so convinced of his cause, or so convincing and deliberate. He described a war that will be long and difficult and different, but he also described a war that can be won, and I thought one of the interesting sentences in the speech was, he said this war will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. That is an objective he can meet because, of course, of the qualification of global reach. To define the enemy, to define the goal.
The President comfortable with himself and with the country. In Washington, Cokie Roberts.
Peter, this is what we're seeing right now. The President walking out and shaking these hands. He came down, put his arm around Tom Daschle, the Senate Majority Leader, then made a point of walking down an aisle through the seats to greet Kwesi Nkrumah, a former member of Congress, now the head of the NAACP. This is a moment of unity that he has not had in his presidency, and the coming to the Congress created this for him. They've been talking it, but now we as Americans see it. And seeing this dome, Peter, that moment when we thought we could have lost the dome of the Capitol in this terrorist attack, it really got to members of Congress. When they came back from their bunker that Tuesday, they looked up and said, thank God it's still here. And the fact that it might not have been, you think about it, Lincoln kept the dome being built through the Civil War, Roosevelt kept it lit up through the World War II. The importance of coming to the Capitol, coming to the Congress cannot be overstated.
Right beside Cokie Roberts tonight in our Washington Bureau, ABC's Sam Donaldson. Sam?
Peter, this was a fierce speech. It sounded fierce. The President looked fierce. I mean, if you look back at the old film of Franklin Roosevelt asking that Congress for declaration of war, you do not see the same type of fierce presentation. I mean, you look at it, Peter, and you think of Shakespeare, cry havoc, let's slip the dogs of war. Well, I think that's probably what the country wanted to hear. The mood of this country is very angry. The president could not have gone forward and seemed to be mild in his presentation. On the other hand, I suppose there are those who worry that now this administration, this country, all of us have to deliver, have to come forward, and in fact, Osama bin Laden must be brought to justice, hard to find as he may be in Afghanistan, assuming that's where he is. Other terrorist groups must be rooted out, perhaps even harder to find them. A war the president said would last for years must be fought. And when he turned to the military and said, be ready, you will make us proud. It's going to be the kind of declaration, the kind of fierceness that has to be followed through. If there isn't a follow through, it's going to be a terrible, terrible letdown.
Thank you very much, Sam. Before we actually leave the Congress itself, I want to hear from ABC's Linda Douglas, who covers the Congress on a daily basis for us. The relationship between the President and the Congress has been transformed in many ways.
Oh, it really has, Peter. The reason that you're not seeing me now, by the way, is because they've asked us to turn all of our lights off for the President's departure. I cannot emphasize to you how tight the security is. This relationship has fundamentally transformed because they were so partisan to begin with, but it's really more than that, Peter. This is very real. I talked to the Majority Leader Tom Daschle the other day, who told me that he's speaking to the President now on a daily basis, sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes at a time. The President is asking his advice, and what you saw in the hug that took place between the President and the Majority Leader Tom Daschle was real affection.
We're not just all journalists here this evening. We have several guests who have listened very carefully to this for the message that it sends, not just beyond the country, but beyond, not just beyond Washington, but beyond the country. We're joined in Washington by the chaplain, the Muslim chaplain at Georgetown University, Imam Yahya Hendi, who's in our Washington bureau this evening. Imam Hendi, the President spoke very explicitly and directly, not only to the nation's Muslims, but to the world's.
Yes.
And how effective do you think he was in this particular regard?
Well, I think he did very well in terms of, number one, making that there's a distinction between Islam and terrorism, that Islam is a religion of peace, a religion of justice, and he also urged the American people to be cautious, not to jump into conclusions and to go after Muslims or Arabs in America. But I believe he needed to be more aggressive or more assertive in that message. There are international students in America who decided to leave America in the last few days because of the tragedy, out of fear. I need to hear him more clear in terms of his message to the American people, because there are 240 cases so far of Muslims being attacked, being discriminated against. I needed more, a clear message to the American people from him, I guess.
Thank you, Imam Hendi, very much.
Thank you.
We're also joined by the president of one of the nation's foremost universities, Brown University in Rhode Island. Ruth Simmons is the first Afro-American president of a major Ivy League university, and therefore sees this, I think, from a variety of perspectives. President Simmons?
Well, Peter, I'm so touched by the President's speech. I think it was a stirring, moving performance, and he touched all bases. He rallied the country. He talked about compassion. He talked about respect for different religions. He talked about the need for Americans to be strong and to face the future. So it was an incredible performance, and I think that most Americans can feel very proud of the Congress and the leaders of the country tonight.
Sam Donaldson referred to this, I think, as an aggressive speech, or certainly a very forward-leaning speech. You talk to university presidents all over the country. You know the American college student body well. How will it go down on the campus?
I think it'll be mixed, of course, because young people are going to naturally be concerned about the future that they're going to face. That is to say, what kind of war are we looking at if, in fact, we are going to see combat? What will it mean for them? They're very much concerned about the kind of future that they will inherit. So I think that they're going to want to analyze the President's words very closely. They will pay attention to intent here. They'll pay attention to whether or not the words that he spoke encompass all areas of the world and compassion to all groups, because young people care deeply about this. But at the same time, many of them want to see the country rally around our armed forces, and support the inevitable conflict that will arise. And so I think that it will be very mixed on our campuses.
Many thanks, President Simmons.
Thank you.
The President spoke very specifically about the economy and about airline safety and the condition of the nation's airlines. We're joined by our business correspondent, our business and economic correspondent, Betsy Stark, tonight. Betsy, you talked to the business community. You've heard the debate about how much government should get involved in trying to give the economy a boost. How do you think it will be received in the business community?
Well, Peter, I think there are certain industries in this country that are in such deep financial trouble, the airlines, as you suggested, travel and tourism, that they want to know what Washington is going to do for them right now so that they can stay in business, so they can avoid more layoffs. Those kinds of specifics were not given tonight. They were not expected. Beyond that, I think the business community was looking for enough show of leadership from the president, enough of a sense of a specific plan of action that it will begin to restore consumer confidence in the future. And consumer confidence is absolutely key to the economy. We heard the president ask Americans to show their confidence by continuing to participate in it.
And Lisa Stark, who covers the aviation industry for us and the Federal Aviation Administration. The president spoke, among other things, of the Marshals Program. In the last week, how much progress has the nation's aviation network made in making it safer?
Well, they've certainly started to add many more air marshals. About 50 will be ready to roll this weekend. They anticipate they'll be training at least 100 more every few days starting next week. But there's a lot more to be done, and both the Transportation Secretary and the head of the Federal Aviation Administration acknowledged that today on Capitol Hill under very sharp questioning by lawmakers. They acknowledged there is much more to be done, and they promised that they would do it. Peter?
Thanks very much, Lisa. While we're in Washington, I want to talk to ABC's Claire Shipman, who covers the White House for us. Claire, the president said at one point, from this day forward, any nation that continues to harbor or support terrorism will be regarded by the United States as a hostile regime. Should we be taking that as the Bush doctrine?
I think so, Peter, and it's interesting because this was a very firm message to the international community, and it's not necessarily the message those abroad wanted to hear. Moderate Arab nations, even NATO allies, were not looking for a lot of bellicose language about war. They weren't looking for ultimatums, but that's what they got, and that's what they've been hearing in private. In fact, the only thing that I think some of the nations abroad, especially the moderate Arab nations, were looking to hear was the fact that this is not a war against Islam, it's not a war against Arabs. They got that part of the message, but for the most part, this is not going to be reassuring to the international community, which was looking for something probably a little bit softer.
Thank you, Claire, very much. Now let us turn to Afghanistan, to which, or to whom, in the persons of the Taliban who run Afghanistan, the president was so direct. Delivered to the United States authorities all the leaders of Osama bin Laden's organization. Close immediately every terrorist base. Give the United States full access to terrorist training camps so the U.S. can make sure these demands are not open to negotiation or discussion. The Taliban must act, and act immediately. They will hand over the terrorists or they will share their fate. We're joined this evening by the retired General Richard Hawley from Newport News, Virginia. Your reaction to that, sir?
Well, Peter, the president set some pretty strong objectives. He defined the adversary. So I think the military and the armed forces got what they needed tonight from this speech. But more important, I think they got a demonstration of strong and united leadership from both the president and a united Congress, leading a united American people, which is really the most important thing that the armed forces need right now at the beginning of what is going to be a very difficult and long campaign that's going to involve more than just the armed forces. There's an awful lot of other agencies and people around the world who are going to be in this with us.
I appreciate it, General Hawley. Thank you very much. I want to turn to our resident military analyst, Tony Cordesman, for, if I may, a brief answer, Tony, on how tall an order is this in Afghanistan.
It is a tall order, Peter, because it's bin Laden, his entire network, and within hours or days, it's the Taliban regime.
That was certainly brief, Tony. Thank you very much. I'd like to get at least a minute or less, if I may, from our correspondent in Pakistan tonight, Bob Woodruff, as to how this will be received in that part of the world.
Well, Peter, you know, the people here were holding out some hope, at least, that maybe war was not coming to this area. The president tonight really foreclosed that completely. This is an ultimatum to the Taliban that cannot possibly be met reasonably. This is a regime that could barely get it together to just urge Osama bin Laden to leave, and now they're asking him to hand him over and also give the U.S. access to their camps. They will never do that. Of course, students of history will remember that World War I began with an ultimatum to the Serbs that could never be met, and we saw what happened there in the beginning of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century. War is sure to come here as well, Peter.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Very much appreciate that. We're going to give, speaking of history, the last word here tonight to our much-valued resident historian, Michael Beschloss.
Good evening, Peter. You know, I think one final headline is the imperial presidency is back. We just saw it. You know, in the 20th century, during World War II and the Cold War, Congress deferred to presidents. When Eisenhower asked for an interstate highway system, or when Kennedy said, go to the moon, Congress said, if you ask us, we will. Now George Bush is at the center of the American solar system. That was not true 10 days ago.
I thank you. I thank all my colleagues at ABC News. I thank those guests who joined us this evening. Our coverage of this crisis for the United States will, of course, continue. Don't forget Nightline later this evening. I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
This has been an ABC News special report. President Bush's address to Congress. For continuing coverage, stay with ABC News and abcnews.com.
The longest-lasting full-size pickup on the road now comes with an incredible short-term offer. Get up to $5,000 in finance savings on Dodge Ram or $2,000 cash allowance, plus factory-to-dealer incentives that could save you even more. See, compare, drive, Dodge during the Team Dodge sales event.
Pardon me, ma'am. What's going on?
Oh, can't stop. Got to shop.
Are they having a sale?
It's not just a sale, it's the sale.
Come to Goodies Friday and Saturday during the sale and get store-wide savings on fall's best new style.
I can't believe these prices.
Shop Goodies Friday night until 11.
My boys go through clothes so fast, I'm going to be back here next week.
Boys Urban Jeans, just $17.99. Selected related separates, 40% off. Junior Xanadu Jeans, $24.99.
It is the best sale I've been to in a very long time. It's the sale. Nobody knows clothes like Goodies.
More people choose Ford over any other car or truck during Ford's authorized clearance final days. Now's the time to get the largest cashback ever on F-Series Super Duty, $1,000, or get $1,500 cash back on Ford F-150. $1,000 on Super Duty, $1,500 on F-150. It's your turn to save during the final days of Ford's authorized clearance. See your local Ford dealer today.
It's the harvest sale at Lazarus. With our lowest prices of the season, you'll save more than you ever imagined. Look for amazing super buys and half-price specials all over the store. And low sale prices on the newest styles for fall, many at our lowest prices of the season. Plus, the shopping pass in today's paper is good for an extra 10 or 15% off sale, clearance, and even regular prices. Shop the harvest sale. It starts tomorrow at Lazarus.